Are you a vet with a current service-connected condition that you feel has gotten worse over the years and you're wondering, why hasn't the VA increased my rating? Can I get a rating? Well, the answer is yes, you can get an increased rating, but it is not automatic. In this video today, I'm going to show you how to increase your rating. I'm going to talk to you about what the VA is looking for to get the increase. But basically, I want you to know that yes, you can get an increase, but you just got to do a couple of things to make sure that you meet the VA's requirements. So first, when can you increase a rating? We already know it's not automatic. You can ask for an increase on a VA rating for a condition that you currently have service connected that has gotten worse. Okay, so a condition that's gotten worse, or even if you have a condition that was never rated properly because maybe you didn't have the right medical evidence. So if you're asking yourself, what do I need to show? I'm going to jump now into how do you do it. The first thing you want to do is you want to know what the VA requires you to have for that condition. There's a couple different ways to do it. I think the easiest way is just to go onto Google and search your condition VA disability rating criteria, and it will spell it out for you. Find where you're currently rated for that condition, and you can do that by going on to va.gov and checking it, or looking at your last decision review letter, and it'll tell you. And let's just say it's knee pain, 10%. What I want you to do is I want you to read what it says on the internet about the criteria for a 10% rating for your condition, for knee or whatever it is. And you'll probably find that all of that criteria matches your current symptoms. Then I want you to go to the next rating criteria above that, and you'll see what the rating criteria is for that specific rating. And if you meet those, then there's a chance that you might meet the next higher rating criteria. You want to figure out where you are in the criteria. Another way to do this is to just grab your decision review letter that you got from the VA probably years ago. If you've already thrown that away, you can download it on va.gov, just create an account. It's a little confusing to find, but you can do it. And you can review that decision letter, and it'll give you information about, why they rated you, where they rated you. It'll also tell you what you need to get an increased rating, what symptoms you need to have, or whatever the criteria is. Now, if you decide that you're there and you have this, then you need to make the decision. Well, how do I do it? What do I need to give the VA to get that increased rating? And it's essentially just gathering new evidence. Okay, there's different types of evidence that you're going to need. Medical evidence and non-medical evidence may work in your specific criteria, but I'm going to give you a few examples of evidence that may help you get an increased rating. Any new medical records. So if you have worsening symptoms, it's very likely that you've been back to the doctor repeatedly for the same condition, and those doctor notes, even if they're VA medical records or personal medical records, all of those things will help you. What I would suggest that you do is, either print them off or keep them on a digital file, highlight them, get a notebook, write in there, that you have these, write in there the symptoms that you've complained about, and match them up with what you found on your Google search for the different criteria. Some other things that might help are statements from friends and family to, talk about the condition or how it impacts your life. So if it's, again, we'll use the example, a knee condition, maybe it keeps you from doing things that you used to do. Maybe, you used to jog with a jogging club and now you can't anymore, or you fall behind, or whatever the case is. Those statements that other people in your life can write for you can show the VA how it has impacted you. So that is a great piece of evidence. I've seen lay statements, especially from spouses, help improve or get increases in specific or certain disabilities. Another thing that's very helpful, and I highly suggest it, is a personal statement. A personal statement is a great way for you to put your honest feelings on a piece of paper. Just make sure you're not rambling and going into things that don't matter. keep to what the VA is looking for. They don't have time or don't need to know everything about you. They just need to know that, you have, that your condition affects you in a certain way, and that way they can rate you appropriately. Another really good way to increase a rating is to get an independent medical opinion from a doctor or a medical professional. There are a bunch of those out there on the internet. I just say use some caution when you're doing it. They're not always necessary, but they are expensive. I do have a directory of medical professionals who advertise that they do these services. You may find them on the internet as nexus letters, but if you're trying to increase something, it's not necessarily a nexus letter, but a lot of those doctors that advertise nexus letters can do the independent medical opinions. And I think they're great, especially, if you have like a mental health condition or something like that, that you can have a doctor look at it and explain why you should be rated higher. Obviously, the doctor is going to want to review some of your own medical records and talk to you to make sure that what they're putting on paper is accurate. But in many ways, it's worth whatever it is that you pay for it. But I will say that none of those doctors should be guaranteeing a rating increase for you. If you want to see a list of those doctors, I do have it on my website. I do not have a relationship with any of those doctors at the time of this recording. I don't charge them for the listings at this time. I do have plans in the future to do that, just trying to be transparent with you, and I certainly don't charge you for it. I would ask that if you use them, you review them so that other vets can get an idea for how that medical professional is, how their services are. All of these doctors have stuff on the internet. That list that I created is just a simple, a list of ones that I've found that I think, I put them on there. I can't recommend any of them. I didn't use them, but they're there for you to do your own due diligence and figure out if that's helpful for you. I'll put a link to that website in the description box below. And then, of course, the last one that I'm going to talk about, the last piece of evidence, would be like your employment records. If you have a job where, you got to use your body or your brain or whatever, and your condition impacts you at that job, maybe you have, been written up, or maybe your boss or coworkers have, documented, I don't know, it could be anything. Like maybe you've slacked off a little bit because of your condition. They could also write personal statements, or you could find employment records if you have been written up. And I think that would be super helpful. And that's not always a negative thing. Maybe you've had to call out sick because your sinus, infection is really, really bad. So your boss could write you a letter, or you could bring in that sick leave. And I think that's super helpful. Things like that. Those are things that I want you thinking about for increases. And now before I jump into filing this thing, I do want to say that, there is a phrase out there called poking the bear. If you file for an increase, you could be poking the bear and you could get a decrease, even if it wasn't necessarily, even if it's not justified. Maybe you get a rater that just doesn't see it, or maybe you don't, articulate it well enough during a C&P exam, or whatever the case is. You could get decreased. So I just want you to keep that in mind when you're doing this, that, you want to make sure that everything's, right on the spot, but I also don't want to scare you into that. And one way you can mitigate that is by doing a lot of this homework yourself and figuring out your game plan and kind of owning this claim or owning this increase, and then take that information that you have to your VSO, who can help you and kind of be that second set of eyes, and make sure that you're not doing something that would be detrimental to your current rating. So once you feel that way and you feel comfortable and you go to your VSO, you simply file the request. It's an increase. You're basically going to put in there that you're filing for an increase due to your symptoms becoming worse. Or are you appealing within a year? Whatever those two options are, the VA gives you two options. The next thing that you got to do is you got to be ready for your C&P exam. And once you file it, typically the VA is pretty quick to schedule you for a C&P exam. Don't be worried about it. Just be prepared. They're typically very fast, right? You've already been to probably a few. You're going to be asked everything on that DBQ. You're going to be asked, or you may not even be asked a lot of the things that you want to explain, but you want to make sure that you can talk about all the symptoms and the medical evidence and non-medical evidence that you gather during this step, and you want to have that with you at the C&P exam so that the C&P examiner doesn't have to dig. Remember, they're spending a very short period of time with you, and you have probably spent months gathering this evidence, maybe even years. So you want to make sure that they understand that this is how your condition has worsened, and this is the evidence to prove it. A lot of times the C&P examiners, in my experience, don't even know what the rating criteria is. They're just filling out that DBQ and they're moving forward. Some of them might know, but a lot of them don't. So you want to make sure that they know what evidence you have and how that plays into it. And sometimes that can be challenging, but I've also found bringing evidence to my C&P exams makes their job a lot easier, and it captures a more accurate understanding of how my conditions are. So do that. Be completely honest with them. Don't have have a good day, but don't go in there and only talk about your good days. Talk about your bad days too. Make sure that they know that this happens. I feel this way this many times a week or whatever it is. Make sure they understand that. I think all too many times vets go into these C&P exams and they want to downplay everything. Oh, it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't impact me that much. No, that's the time to make sure that they know that this impacts you. Listen, I also have on my website an article that pretty much goes through this entire thing in detail. If you're more of a reader than a watcher, I'll put that link in the description box below so you can check that out. But essentially, if your condition has began to worsen, you can request an increase on your VA disability rating for that condition.